Hey yo, what up, y'all? Cannibal back, and today I'm going over the fights to make after UFC Singapore. We had kind of a nutty main card, and if you're an American fan, then you know that that was kind of a sludge to try and stay awake for. But once we got there, boy, did it deliver. Those prelims had quite a few bangers on there, and that main card was fire too. I slept through most of it because I passed out on my couch, but I woke up like just in time for that main event and to see the walkout and everything. And man, that was just like damn near enough to make a grown man cry. It's it was really something special. Got to be one of the best retirements we've ever seen. I know, with the way Zombie got knocked out cold, it's not really one of the best retirements we've ever seen, but just with the amount of love and respect that Arena showed him, it was really something else. And really, just anytime we get so many of these like awesome crowd moments, like especially lately in the past couple of months, and it just makes Brazil look worse and worse. Like I keep wanting to go back there because there's just so much Brazilian talent that like we may as well. But I still have such a sour taste in my mouth after that event at the beginning of the year with Glover, and then the way they treated Moreno when he beat Figgy. I mean, it was just like, come on, guys. You've had Brazilians lose here before. Like, it's not unheard of. I don't know why they reacted so badly that time, but it is what it is. I'm here to give you guys the break. I'm here to take the winners and some of the losers from the main card, and I'm gonna be matching them up with who I think would be the next best fight for them. Moving on, so starting us off, we got freaking just Junior Tafa. Sorry, not Justin. Junior Tafa had a pretty good knockout of Parker Porter, following in the footsteps of his brother. Just face planting him in the first round. It's a pretty good knockout. Waldo Cortez Acosta fought on the same card a couple fights before Tafa did, and also got a nice little win for himself too. So this just seems like a no-brainer. Couple low-rank heavyweights, both with a little bit of a name to them. Just match them up and see who wins next. Whoever wins this probably gets a ranked opponent next, or is like 2 fights away from a ranked opponent, something like that. So seems like a no-brainer. Just match these two guys up with each other. Not too much to think about. Hopefully Tafa, I hope that Tafa can keep winning, and we can see him maybe build a little bit of a name off that. Moving on, we got Tyler Santos and Aaron Blanchfield had an incredible fight back and forth. Well, incredible is the wrong word. It was boring. We'll let's be honest here. It was boring. It was quite a clinch fest. If you guys saw Marab versus Jose Aldo, Santos was Aldo and Blanchfield was Marab. So I mean, definitely could have been better, but at least it was a fight where the result of it at the end actually meant something. So no matter what, you kind of were on the hook. You were kind of like on the edge of your seat, like what's going to happen. Santos lost that fight, and she didn't really get blown out of the water though, the way Blanchfield's done to a few of her past opponents like Andrade and McCann. So I think it shows Santos really does have some really good skill here, and especially with the way that she arguably beat Shevchenko in the fight before that. She doesn't really deserve to drop down very far or leave the top of the division much at all, I would say. So you got this weekend in UFC Paris, you've got Fiorat and Namajunas fighting each other, and depending on how that fight goes, if one of them gets an exciting finish, they probably get the title shot above Blanchfield in that division, especially if Namajunas gets some sort of crazy knockout over Fiorat. She's obviously getting that title shot. So the seems like a no-brainer. Just give Tyler Santos the loser of this fight, and then whoever would win this fight would become right back there into title contention. The other person needs to go fight a few contenders, but I don't think Santos is necessarily in a position right now where she needs to start climbing back up the ladder and whatnot. Let's keep her up there and keep some things interesting. Hopefully that Fiora Namajunas fight is good. And speaking of which, I do believe that Namajunas Fiora fight will end in a finish, some sort of knockout, hopefully. Probably Fiora on Namajunas, given the way that Rose has been looking lately. Which means they'll have a lot more hype and a lot more momentum right after their fight, and more likely to get the title shot, given that like a week or two afterwards the Shevchenko Grasso fight's gonna happen, so it's not like the timing won't be there. So since Blanchfield will be busy kind of waiting for that in the meantime, likely. I mean, if this fight doesn't go excitingly, then they'll probably give it to Blanchfield. But in the meanwhile for that, we could pair up Blanchfield with Juliana Pena. And you guys are asking, this is two different divisions. What are you talking about? Well, when Nunez retired, I don't know if anybody caught it, but Blanchfield spoke up and said she had interest in fighting for that vacant bantamweight title. And I was kind of holding off on waiting to see if she would beat Santos before I kind of like went heavy on this idea. But I just, especially now with Bueno Silva having popped hot, like, I just don't. The only options now are Juliana Pena and Raquel Pennington for that bantamweight title fight, and I don't want that. I just don't want that. That's so fucking boring. Like, Juliana Pena can make things kind of interesting. Bueno Silva started throwing some jabs back on line. I mean, if Bueno Silva gets caught or found, like, not guilty and she's not suspended, that would still be my pick for the bantamweight title fight. But if Blanchfield's going to be sitting out waiting for a flyweight title shot, may as well just give her a bantamweight title shot in the meantime. The fact alone of Blanchfield moving up from flyweight to this division, I think, gives this more hype than Pena versus Pennington would. Plus, more people like Blanchfield right now than they do Pennington. And Pena's already an interesting enough name as it is. So this fight actually becomes like a title fight that I would be curious to go see. I think it might actually have some interesting build-up. I think the fight itself would actually be pretty interesting. I think Blanchfield probably grappled fucks her, but I mean, I like this one a lot. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think this is what should happen. In the meanwhile, though, Blanchfield's probably just going to either wait and see for her title shot, or maybe Blanchfield will probably end up fighting like the loser of Fiora Namajunas, and that'll be a number one contenders fight or something like that. So this is what I want to see, though, because I think this is a winnable fight for her. I think she could, if she won this belt and then was already a number one contender at flyweight, would arguably be allowed to go down and fight for that belt. The only real problem I could see is maybe Blanchfield doesn't want to stay up there and defend the bantamweight belt, even though that's an easier weight cut for her than flyweight would be. So I don't see that necessarily being a problem, but you know, I think it's the most interesting thing by far. And it's really what I would like to see. Moving on, Nakamura is going to be a problem in this division. Absolutely just kind of took Fernie Garcia to school. That guy had no business being in that cage. I honestly felt bad for Garcia in that fight, watching his facial expression as Nakamura just ragdolled him around the ground, basically. But that's another exciting prospect in the bantamweight division, and I am really excited for this one, especially seeing the Japanese talent. I think he could really shake up this division pretty well, and I'd like to put him against Christian Rodriguez. This guy's got a pretty good record as well. He's 9-1. Nakamura, I believe, is now 10-0. So records-wise, these guys are really good against each other. Rodriguez just went up against Raul Rosas Jr., who is another big prospect coming into the bantamweight division. Not necessarily because everyone was like, oh, he can do super well, but because of how young he was. Or still is, really. But I think it'd be nice to put Rodriguez against another one of these prospects and just, you know, keep nudging him, keep testing him a little bit. Because I do notice the UFC, once they find like one unranked guy that is like good enough to put against like big name unranked prospects, I guess you would say, they kind of just keep reusing him for that thing, like they're doing with Bruno Silva in the middleweight division. They gave him Alex Pereira, and now they're giving him Sharaputin Magomedov, or whatever his name is, that bullet guy, Russian. They're giving him that guy again, so I'm like, here, we'll just make him the bantamweight version of that. And I also think this would be a good fight. I think it'd be nice, a little nice test for Nakamura's grappling. Not that he, and you know, I don't know, just overall like a nice little unranked prospect versus prospect. Both guys have a little bit of a name to them, a nice shiny record, and we'll just see who can skyrocket and who's gonna need to take a little bit more of a journey. On the loser of our featured fight was Alex Caceres, and Caceres is a bit of a vet. You know, he had not the worst performance in that fight, but like the fight IQ was just non-existent because I don't know why you wouldn't try to offensively grapple a guy like Giga Chikadze, who's known for the Giga kick. But whatever, Caceres, you do you. You at least still around that way, so good for you. But you just lost, and you were sitting right there at number 15 in the rankings. You lost to like Giga, who I think is like number 11 or 9 or something like that. I don't see Caceres going anywhere. I'm not that interested in him. I kind of want to get him out of here. So I want to put him against Nathaniel Wood, who's a really exciting up-and-coming prospect. He's kind of sitting just outside that rankings section, and he's on a bit of a win streak. So I think this is a perfect matchup. It'll be the perfect one to kind of get Wood into the rankings. And if it's not too hard of a matchup for Caceres either, because Nathaniel Wood's another kind of striker guy. So if he actually decides to play this one a little smart, he definitely easily has a path to victory here. I would say, if anything, it'd be one of those 29-28 decisions for Caceres if he were to win. But I think this is a good one. If Caceres loses this, you know, I mean, he's been around for so long and hasn't really done much of anything that I want to start turning over, getting some new guys in here who haven't had the opportunity to be ranked yet. And I think Nathaniel Wood's a perfect guy to match him up against. As for the winner of that fight, Giga Chikadze, I know he called out Yair Rodriguez. I don't hate that matchup. I actually like that matchup quite a bit. Especially, I mean, it's a striker's dream in that featherweight division, and it's a kicking nightmare. But I just don't think Giga deserves that fight. I think it's a bit too much of a jump up in the rankings. Not that we couldn't use that at featherweight to shake things up. So maybe I'm actually talking myself into it more as I'm sitting here right now. But my original thought is I would prefer Chikadze versus Yusuf. These guys are much closer to each other in the rankings. Yusuf's still below Chikadze. And I really want to start getting Yusuf some fights that are like up in the rankings for him. Start building him up there. I want to see him start taking on some of these higher level guys. You know, I want to start seeing Yusuf versus Allen, Yusuf versus Cater, Emmett, all of these ones. And I think this might be a nice one to kind of build back off of. I don't know where Yusuf's been, but if Chikadze heals up kind of quick, we can get him back in there. Both guys not particularly active in these last few months, so it'll be nice for both of them to kind of warm back up again still into this one. I know Chikadze just kind of had his warm-up, but you know what I mean. Yusuf's not quite as old as Caceres, so it's a little bit less of a warm-up anyways. I think this is just a really good mid-rankings featherweight matchup. This one's still a really good striking matchup like Chikadze and Yair. Maybe not quite as like on paper, holy shit, but definitely still catches my attention. And you know, with the age of Chikadze, I don't know if I really want him getting up there high in the featherweight rankings, and he just kind of has to slowly fall out through. But if we did it that way too, we'd have a nice bigger name to let people build themselves off of and break into the top 5 with. So I really see no problems with putting Chikadze against Yair. I think Yair would probably take that fight in a heartbeat, especially compared to most of the other guys in that top 5. So, you know, either way you want to do it, but this one is one that I lean towards a bit more. Loser of the co-main event, Ryan Spann. Ryan, no IQ Spann. I mean, he had Smith practically crippled in that second round and then just decided to completely coast in that third, it seemed like. I'm not really sure why he looked so surprised when that decision was read out. He did absolutely nothing to secure that win for himself. You know, I mean, he got damn close to it, but he didn't do anything to secure it for him. So to think that he was safe in having that decision is a little ridiculous, especially when he was so close to finishing Smith. I don't know why he decided to coast for a decision. We all know how these judges get. So I'm surprised that he decided to just kind of go with that. But clearly, no IQ explains why he's so low, and explains why I never really reinforces why I never really thought much of Ryan Spann in the first place. You know, kind of your average big power punching guy, and that's why I'm putting him against Menafield. I don't really see much for either of these two guys, but you know, let's have a fun, big heavy hitter, light heavyweight bout towards the bottom of the rankings. And you know, if Spann loses this fight, I mean, then we really know that he has nothing. Like that we really know he's not going very far in this division. And if Manafield wins, well, then we're gonna start having a DDP situation on our hands, where a dude who has no right being that high up in the rankings is making his way up. And in both situations, it's equally entertaining. So, plus this fight I think would just be good. A nice, fun, two big, bulky kind of guys that are just gonna throw big punches at each other and then gas out. So, by the way, that Smith versus Spann rematch, if I could, I'd make it a fucking draw. I mean, first round, clearly Smith. Second round, clearly Spann. As far as I'm concerned, there wasn't even a third round. Neither guy really did much of anything. I'll give it to Smith just because Spann pissed me off with the way he acted there. But a draw would be my personal score for that. But yeah, Spann Minifield. And then for Anthony Smith, he's got a win. And you know, on paper he's better than a lot of these other guys. So I think since he just got a pretty good win on paper, let's put him against another on paper good opponent. I need to see Rakic back. Where the hell has this guy been? I know he busted up his leg pretty gnarly, but he's been completely dead silent. We've heard absolutely no news about him. I hope he's returning soon. And not because I actually like him or particularly or anything, but just because like he had like what, 2 decent performances and then got his leg torn to shreds. Like I want to like him, but I want to see more. And you know, I think this is a good fight for him. It'll be his first fight back since the injury, and Smith's not exactly, you know, he's a little older, a little more injured himself. So it'd be kind of a nice fight to dip his toes back into, tune up a little bit, and start getting back in with the big boys of the division, the Krylovs, the Ankalaevs, the Blahoviches. You know, I mean, shit. If you really wanted to, you could do Rakic versus Blachowicz or Smith versus Blachowicz, because you know Blachowicz is an old guy. That's good for Rakic coming off an injury. Blachowicz is an old guy. It's good for Smith, who's also a bit of an older guy himself, and injured and a little injury prone as well. But I like this fight. You know, Anthony Smith is. I like that he won this fight, but I don't really want him to beat many of the other people that are above him. And so I think this is a good one to kind of keep him right in that middling range and give Rakic a nice tune-up on his way back. Moving on to the main event. Obviously, Korean Zombie retired, so we're not matching him up. Max Holloway, Aljamain Sterling. Holloway has absolutely nobody left at featherweight. Who are you going to make him fight? Ortega? Yair? Arnold Allen? Come on, Josh Emmett, really? We're not. I don't want to see Holloway versus Emmett. I'm sorry. That's gonna be another Holloway, or that's gonna be a Holloway Cater, but worse, because Cater at least knows how to do some volume and shit. Emmett just comes through with power punches, so he's gonna be way more open and just sitting there for Holloway the whole time. I don't like that. Holloway needs something that's like very interesting stylistically, which would be something like an Ortega rematch, except of how dominant Holloway was in that first fight and the fact that he doesn't look like he's lost a step, while Ortega got equally bitched by Volkanovski. You know, I'm not really interested in that rematch. And all the really notable grapplers in featherweight are so far down in the list. I mean, you've got Evloev and Mitchell, and that's about the extent of like the really notable ranked ones. And they're like number 8, number 11, or not 8. They're like number 11 and 12 or something like that, because Korean Zombie was 8. So they're like 8, or they're like, God, I keep saying it. They're like 11 and 12. And I know we just had Holloway number 1 fight number 8 in TKZ, but we kind of knew Holloway was going to win that one, so the rankings weren't really in any jeopardy. And 11 to 1 is just a massive jump. I know O'Malley and Yan did it, and I could see something similar happening here. And not to say those guys don't deserve it if they don't win, if they win or anything like that, but I don't really want to give them that fight, especially since I don't think they've really done anything to even earn be giving that. You know, O'Malley at least had a bit of star power behind him that could justify that fight. But Evloev and Mitchell don't really have that. Definitely not to the same level O'Malley did. And Mitchell's just lost his last fight. He still needs another one. And Evloev beat Lopez in his last fight. But it's not exactly the kind of dominating, like, impressive performance we're looking for a guy making his UFC debut on short notice, you know? This fight's great because it gives Holloway that stylistic matchup of a grappler with Sterling. Sterling's got a good frame to go against Holloway. It's not a terrible matchup for Holloway because Sterling's striking is quite lacking, especially compared to somebody like Max. Plus, Max would be... I don't even know if Max would even be the bigger guy in this one. I think even with the weight cuts taken into account, Sterling's still the bigger guy. And, Sterling's a few rankings above Holloway in the pound for pound list. So if Holloway were to win this one, he could go up in the pound for pound rankings. Sterling would go down, obviously. So it's not even necessarily a typical ranked fight. It's more like a pound for pound ranking fight, similar to how Volkanovski and Makhachev was for number 1 pound for pound ranking and stuff like that. So I think this is perfect. I think it gives Sterling something to do. It gives Holloway something to do. And this would be an absolutely fantastic co-main or featured fight to any pay-per-view. I mean, I couldn't think of any pay-per-view I wouldn't want to see this on. So, those are my fights, guys. That's what I think should happen. Make sure to follow me, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, or X now, whatever. I'm not updating the logo. I refuse. But let me know what you guys think of those fights. I like a lot of them. Some of them kind of some of them kind of no-brainers. A couple of them are a little more like, fun in my opinion. But yeah, that was MMA Cannibal. My fights to make after UFC Singapore. Looking forward to UFC Paris. I'll have a picks video out for that later this week. And yeah, thanks for watching, you guys. Stay violent.